That was great!
The fun has just begun.
Hey there, it's me, your least favorite YouTuber, the Infuso. Today we're taking a look at the second episode of Batman the Animated Series, Christmas with the Joker. The series' introduction to not only the Joker, but to the Boy Wonder as well. What I've really come to love about this series is that it doesn't over-explain itself to the viewer. Not every villain encounter is some brand new origin story describing the character's tragic past and what led them to a life of villainy. I mean, I'm not knocking that type of storytelling, as this series does do plenty of that, and does so expertly, but it doesn't do that to the point that it becomes too formulaic. Instead, the series drops the viewer into an already existing universe mid-timeline, where some heroes, some villains, and some dynamics are already established. As soon as the episode starts, it's made obvious that this Batman and Joker already have some history. Now, that might in part be due to the fact that the series sort of loosely followed the initial Tim Burton films. It was made to kind of borrow the aesthetic of those movies in that universe, perhaps so that audiences thought that they were in the same canon. Hence why the studio mandated that the Penguin look a lot more similar to his Batman Returns counterpart, even if he was more mild-mannered like his comic book counterpart. So I guess you could say that maybe the studio was banking on audiences having already seen Batman's first encounter with the Joker in 1989. However, this episode also silently introduces Robin as if he was a pre-established fixture in the continuity, which he was not. So, like the episode that came before it, this is a pretty standard story. The Joker escapes from Arkham, has some new heinous scheme, and Batman needs to find him and stop him before it's too late. It's the perfect introduction for this character in this rivalry, because that's practically the basis for almost every major Batman-Joker story, including within this series as well. The story is simple, but it's not without substance. What's always been really interesting to me is how well this series balanced tone. One minute they could be on the verge of something seriously dark for a children's show. And then the next minute, Joker singing Jingle Bells Batman Smells while riding on a Christmas tree rocket. Normally this would feel like it's out of left field or a part of a completely different show, but the clashes in tone kind of stabilize it. It never gets too dark to the point of being unbearably miserable, and it never gets too goofy to the point of coming off as a Saturday morning cartoon show. I think the balance of these two elements also sort of symbolize the clash in personalities between Batman and the Joker. Throughout the episode, the mood shifts every time scenes switch between the two forever foes. When the Joker's the focal point, we see the comedy in everything. Whereas when the narrative focuses on Batman, we're only seeing the tragedy. The story never changes. There's no A or B plot. There's a plot, and there's two separate sides. The plot stays the same, but the perspective changes. When the Clown Prince of Crime is in the spotlight, we get lots of laughs and sarcastic quips. His antics are played for yucks, because ultimately, that's the way the Joker sees the world. The chaos that he's causing is irrelevant to him, as long as there's a punchline. The carnage he's causing is almost played off as being whimsical. It's only when the story cuts back to our heroes that we get to zoom out and see the situation for what it truly is. We're not exactly seen through the eyes of these characters, we're sort of just a fly on the wall for these situations. The episode never stops juggling these two sides of the story. It's a very smart yet subtle way of showing these characters in their mental states, depicting them as the polar opposites we know them to be, while also getting insight on how they view their environment. Two alternate takes on the same timeline. What I wouldn't give to see this kind of back and forth in an actual Batman movie. It's almost like watching two separate movies on the same topic. Just one of those movies is playing things for laughs, while the other is showcasing the severity of the situation. I don't want to talk too much about specific performances in these videos, mainly because I intend on breaking down every major and even some minor performances within the series. It's so rich in quality, quantity, that there's a lot to dissect. And this specific video series isn't the proper place for it. I will, however, say that I am astounded by how many actors had perfectly portrayed their parts within their first couple appearances. I mentioned Kevin Conroy nailing the role in the first video, But Loren Lester as Robin and Mark Hamill as the Joker were on that very same level. Everyone here understood the assignment, which is kind of impressive. Plenty of times in voice acting do you get actors who start off more tame in the role before they wind up finding the character. Sometimes that could take time. The whole cast of Family Guy sounds significantly different in the beginning of the show than they do in the later years. Especially Meg. It's not uncommon for a voice actor to settle into the role after a season or so. But we're on episode 2 and everyone sounds pretty much how they always sound. So I gotta give them credit here. And of course credit to Andrea Romano for both casting all these brilliant actors with incredible voices, but also directing them to iconic performances. Joker causes chaos and leaves a path of destruction that serves as a breadcrumb trail for the Dark Knight, leading our heroes to his whereabouts. Although seeing all these Joker action figures come to life and cause havoc does make me wonder,
Does he get those wonderful toys?
one of the episode's strongest attributes is how well it showcases the never-ending feud between Batman and the Joker. We're dropped into this story in the midst of it, but there's still more than enough context clues there to give us an idea of what this relationship looks like. And we're also able to determine that they've done this little song and dance number a couple of times before. This isn't their first go-around, and I also doubt it's their second or third either, as they're already speaking to each other as if they're lifelong foes. I'm surprised they went this route, as it wasn't really the common thing to do. But various other continuities since then start Batman off mid-Joker rivalry. It's done well because without knowing the official backstory of this particular iteration of the characters, there's enough context in place to understand that such a history exists. If I had one complaint, it would be that Robin doesn't really serve a whole lot of purpose here. He's not given a lot to do, but his presence does still benefit the plot by giving Batman someone to interact with, as well as someone to soften him up in his personal life. I don't know that this is a great Batman and Robin episode, but I do think it's a pretty good Bruce Wayne and Dick Grayson episode. There's some sweet scenes between the two in this, even if they just fly by in the runtime. Dick Grayson trying to get Bruce to stop being a Scrooge, hoping to get him to enjoy the holiday, is just pleasant and nice to see. You feel like in many ways Dick Grayson grounds Bruce Wayne, and his presence puts more of an emphasis on the man that's behind the mask. I also find it pretty funny that Batman's such a sad boy that he actually says he never watched It's a Wonderful Life based on the title alone. This is peak Broody Bruce. I like that this show, while always depicting Batman as a heroic figure, never makes him perfect. He's not always correct. He's a very imperfect and somewhat damaged human being, expecting the worst of people because he's seen the absolute worst of people. Instead of celebrating Christmas, the Caped Crusader takes to the streets of Gotham City to patrol, looking for those looking for trouble. He assumes the worst, and a couple of times, almost makes a bad judgment call. But Robin is there to challenge his misery and reiterate all that's good in the world, assuring him that the streets of Gotham City are safe during the holidays, as even bad guys have families. I mean, that's really flawed logic, but that is a very sweet sentiment. Unfortunately, it's almost a moot point, as Batman's ultimately proved right when the Joker's nefarious schemes are unveiled. Was Robin utilized in this episode to the best of the show's abilities? No, absolutely not. But it did do a good job of giving a soft introduction to the character and the important role he plays in Bruce's life. I don't think this episode made clear that he was a necessity in Batman's day-to-day activity, but it did show him being vital in Bruce Wayne's. There's also a bunch of little things to cherish from this episode as well. I really like that even when the show isn't utilizing all of its characters, it's making reference to them. Case in point, having cardboard cutouts of some of the series' most famous Gothamites to serve as Joker's audience. I mean, look at them. They got the GCPD force, the mayor, and even District Attorney Harvey Dent is in attendance. Come on, how could you not love that? They went above in Batman Beyond. And considering that this is also what wound up being done at baseball games during the pandemic, I gotta say, Joker was clearly a pioneer ahead of his time.
I'm just ahead of the curve.
I like that Joker ushers in a commercial break, because in the actual episode, this is legitimately where the show would cut and go to commercial. It's surprisingly meta from a time period where that wasn't really an in thing. The contrast in Batman and Joker's personalities and clashes in moral is displayed wonderfully. The contrast in Batman and Robin, despite the obvious comparisons there are to make, is also great for the plot. It's a fantastic introduction to all of these characters, and it tells us just enough about who they are as people and what their personalities are like. We get just enough time to get to know just enough about them. No two characters ever feel the same. Each has their own particular place in the story. Overall, yeah, this is a solid episode, and a lot of fun to watch. I remember watching it a lot as a kid on VHS, and this was one of those episodes that I rewound, rewatched, rinse, cycle, repeat. As an adult, I think it still holds up. If you for some reason haven't seen this episode yet, I highly recommend checking it out. It's one of the less serious and softer episodes of the show's run, but it's also one of the better ones. So with all that being said, if you like this video and want to see a follow-up about the third episode of Batman the Animated Series, let me know in the comment section below by leaving a comment saying,
Do something, Batman.
I was your least favorite YouTuber, V Infuso, and I thank you for watching. Hope to see you in the next one.
I am vengeance. I am the night, and that was V Infuso. Just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.
So, if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too would like to become a V-generate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, nerds!
And if you're not joining the fun, you're in for one bad day. And you know what they say about having one bad day?
Catch him next time. Same bat time. Same bat channel.